Imagine I came to you with an offer. I said at the end of this, when you get to age 90, you're going to go through a physical fitness test. And between now and then, you can only do one thing in your training to make sure that you're ready for it. What would you pick? A lot of people would pick running. Some people would pick cycling. Some people would pick even just walking, maybe some swimming. Some fancier people might throw in like words like HIIT for high intensity interval training. They might throw out terms like conjugate method, but very few people will pick the boring option of just saying, I would like to do resistance training. And almost everyone would be wrong, because resistance training is the right answer. If you gave me that deal, I would pick resistance training every single time. Not because I love being in the gym, I just love and know the benefits of resistance training. I'd pick it. It's the closest thing we have to a cheat code for long-term health. And I honestly don't even say that lightly. Welcome back to the Wicklow Strength and Fitness Podcast. It's me, it's Liam. Today we're diving into resistance training and what it actually does for your body, why most people in their 30s, 40s, 50s are maybe getting this wrong, and why if you only do one thing this year, this is the one thing to do. If you're someone who's been told your whole life that exercise means getting your heart rate up, this episode might just change how you feel and think about your body. So let's dive into it, right? So I suppose what we want to think about here is that, everything goes in waves, everything goes in cycles. Cardio has been popularized, and the mainstream message really for the last 40 years has been do your cardio. However, strength training does come in and out of fashion. I feel like it was in fashion from maybe 2016 till roughly around COVID time. However, coming out of COVID, cardio saw another resurgence, right? People started getting really into running, getting really into doing endurance events like high rocks and trica and things like that, which are amazing, by the way. I feel like I have to throw that out so I don't get eaten in the comments. But the reality is it's incomplete without looking after your muscles. So, I've had this happen so many times. People who are really cardiovascularly fit can come into the gym and expect to be able to perform when it comes to the resistance training side. And they are often shocked and humbled by the fact that they are a lot weaker than they originally thought they were going to be when they come in. They're not as able to perform simple ranges of motion on things like squats, deadlifts, presses, overhead, because they've been constantly running the roads and kind of beating themselves up in that way by only training in one discipline. So I suppose when we think of it that way, the way we talk about fitness in general has been hijacked by merely heart rate and lung output. Like, how much can you sustain for cardiovascular work? And I suppose it is very important. There's no denying it. It is a huge factor in fitness. However, it's just one aspect. And a lot of people are maybe overtraining that one aspect and neglecting the other aspects of fitness that you need to be all round, right? Because at the end of the day, your muscles aren't just there for picking something up. They're not just there for helping you pick up the shopping. They're the largest endocrine organ in your body. They send signals to your brain, your bones, your immune system, your blood sugar regulation, all of it. When you lose muscle, you actually lose that connection. Your body is healthier when you carry more muscle mass to help you throughout your day. So there's people who can run, sub 4-hour marathons who probably struggle to pick themselves up off the floor because they haven't been training their muscles to move in different ranges of motion and to have that mobility and strength in positions to be able to do that. And look, let's look at it this way, right? We talked about, being fit and active at 90 years old at the opening of this podcast. So let's look at 3 things that quietly decide how you age. Number 1, bone density. Bones are not the static, metal rods that we almost think of when we saw the skeleton back in school. They're actually a living tissue that responds to load. Okay, we'll hear about that a lot. If there's no load, there's no incentive for your bones to stay strong. That's often why resistance training is promoted for women as they age, because past 30, women lose roughly 1% of bone density per year. And after menopause, that actually increases to much more. Men lose it too, it's just slower. It doesn't happen as quick as it does for women. So what do we want to do? Well, we want to add in the resistance training. We want our bodies to tell our bones that, hey, we still need you. And unfortunately, cardio does not send that signal. We need to be resisting gravity with weight-bearing movements. And why does that matter? Well, bone fractures in older adults are not just painful. They are also incredibly painful. They're actually catastrophic, though. Hip fractures in over 65s are directly correlating with mortality rates. It's insane. And you can probably think of people in your own family who, as they have aged, and if they haven't, looked after their physical health, they tend to age faster. And then you can see the impact of things like a fall that can really have on their independence and their mobility in their day-to-day life. So that's number one. Number two, so we had bone density as number one. Number two is insulin sensitivity. And look, I'm not going to go too much into this. I've done an entire podcast episode on insulin, but the simplest version to think of it is when you eat carbohydrates, your body then digests that, converts it into glucose, puts it into the bloodstream. That then sends the trigger for insulin to come out. And basically what insulin's job is to push that glucose into your muscle. The more muscle you have, the more space there is to store that glucose in the body and keeps it out of, causing problems. It means there's less of an insulin spike. There's lower long-term diabetes risk. There's more stable energy just in general, and you'll have fewer afternoon crashes, which is also huge, right? People who lift consistently, even moderately, have dramatically better metabolic health than people who do not. And this is true regardless of weight. You can be a heavier person, but if you are lifting weights, you are more likely to have a much better metabolic health than people who are not lifting. Mechanism 3 then. So we have so far bone density, insulin sensitivity, and then sarcopenia. This is, the word sarcopenia means age-related muscle loss. The biggest reason elderly people lose their independence. And I don't know about you, but I don't want to end up in a care home, personally. And here's the stats, right? So after 30, untrained adults lose about 3 to 8% of muscle mass per decade. After 60, it accelerates even further. So we talked about losing bone density, now we're talking about losing muscle mass, and you wonder why older people tend to look smaller, right? The version of you at 75 is built by the version who lifted at 35, 45, 55. The version of you at 90 is dictated by your actions today, tomorrow, and for the rest of your life. So I know it's normal in this industry, and for you guys, even thinking about your goals, we're thinking about what's around the corner. We're thinking about training for the next High Rocks race. We're thinking about looking good when we go on summer holidays. But the reframe here is to try and think that you're not just training for next summer. You're training for the version of you that will play with your grandkids, maybe even great grandkids when you're 90 years old, and be able to get down on the floor, play with them, get up and carry on about your day and not have everybody holding their breath, fearing you're going to fall. That's kind of what I want, right? So why do people get this wrong? Well, often, very, very often, we'll hear the age-old saying of, I do not want to get bulky. And all I can say to that one is, listen, I've been spending my whole life trying to get bulky. It's very hard. You do not touch a weight and all of a sudden look like Arnold Schwarzenegger. Building visible muscle takes years of really challenging effort. You have to constantly work at that. There's people who have a goal of looking bulky who struggle with it. So don't worry. You don't accidentally Hulk out by touching a few dumbbells. You will get strong though. You will get capable and you will look more toned and just look better in general by lifting weights than if you just relied on cardio alone. Another one, and I have a personal kind of attachment to this, is where you hear, I have bad knees, I have a bad back, I have a bad shoulder. I list those three exact ones because I heard them from my own father for about 10 years before I finally convinced him to come in and do some resistance training. And do you know what happened to those pains? Yeah, I wouldn't be mentioning it if it didn't go well, right? So yeah, they went away. Resistance training, when done well with a coach, is the single most rehabilitative thing you can do for those joints. The body adapts to demands. You build a structure that prevents injury in the first place by challenging your body through the correct ranges of motion with resistance training. Another one we'll often hear, another complaint is, I'm too old to start. 80 and 90-year-olds will show measurable strength gains within weeks of actually starting to incorporate resistance training. We've seen this in-house with the members we've worked with who are slightly older, into their 80s. The difference you see in their strength actually happens quite quickly. It is never too late to start. So if you're listening to this thinking, oh, he's talking to people in their 40s or even in their 30s about training now to maintain their function, no, it's not too late. If you're 74 years old and thinking about this, thinking you've missed the boat, thinking you wish that someone had told you to start lifting weights earlier, well, I'm telling you to start lifting weights now. You're never too old to start. There is no age where the human body stops responding to load. None whatsoever. Don't use that excuse. And finally, the last one is, I don't have time. 2 45-minute sessions a week. That is enough time to move the needle on every mechanism that you need to perform in the gym. Everything we've talked about so far, you can achieve in 2 45-minute sessions a week. It's probably less time than you spend on your phone in bed each week, right? And I'm actually going to tell a story about Alan, who joined us about 18 months ago. He's down like 10 kg of body fat. He's added like 5 kg of muscle purely through resistance training. And he's done that with 2 45-minute PT sessions a week. And also, and the reason I bring him up for the I don't have time, Alan is a father to young children. Alan also works shifts, but he builds his sessions into his week. If he needs to move them, he doesn't cancel them. He works really hard to get those 2 sessions in. And to be honest, it's hard for him, but he still gets it. He still makes it happen. So honestly, if I had €1 for every time someone walked in here apologizing for being too old to start, I'd probably have about 17 gyms now, or else I'd have retired to the Cayman Islands maybe. There's often people making excuses about, I'm too old, I wish I was started sooner. We hear that all the time. So I guess if you're a member of ours and you're listening, I hope this kind of inspires you to, number one, continue training and maybe prioritize the strength movements of classes a little bit more. One thing that we're highly aware of is that you want to do cardio. Everybody loves it. I know. There's so many events built purely around cardio. I want you to go and do Trika. I want you to go and do high rocks, but I want you to do them and perform at your best. And that's going to happen if you're doing all of that training alongside doing your resistance training. Too often as coaches, we hear when it comes to the strength and accessories portion of our classes, let's say, that, oh, I'm saving myself for the workout. I'm saving myself for the conditioning at the end. And that is something you need to try and shift. By all means, come to the conditioning focused classes, which are currently on a Tuesday and a Thursday. There's far more of that in there. But instead, when you come to those strength-based classes, when you see there is an A and a B that is strength and accessory focused, commit to it. Commit to working hard within the parameters that we set out. So obviously still hitting the tempo, hitting the rep ranges, hitting the correct range of motion as we're going to coach you to do. But don't say things like, oh, well, I'm saving myself for the conditioning. You do not need to. It's all been laid out so that you don't have to. If you're someone who's coming 5 times a week, you don't need to worry about saving yourself for the conditioning. On the days that are primarily strength-based, that's what we want for you. So that's kind of going out to the people who are listening from members. If you're not, like, honestly, 2 sessions a week, that's all it takes. And this kind of goes out to our members and all as well. Like, if you can get 2 sessions a week, if you do nothing else, if you get 2 resistance training sessions in a week, it doesn't have to be 3, it doesn't have to be 5, even if that's what you're normally used to chasing. When times get busy, get at least 2. That's the floor. If you schedule them in like dentist appointments, you will be there. They don't move. If they have to move, if you need to adjust, just still make sure you get another session in the week so you balance out your 2. And also, let's talk about the bells and the whistles, right? Unfortunately, Instagram is a thing. No, I'm joking. You're probably going to see a clip out of that on Instagram at some point. Social media is amazing. However, what it does is it can distract us, okay? And what we actually need from people is consistency. And what doesn't help with consistency is you seeing videos from influencers that say, don't do bench press. Bench press is the bottom of the barrel. You need to do my 6-week program. Insert here. Don't worry about any of that, right? There's too many people trying to be famous on the internet disguising as helping, and it's not really there to do anything. So what I need you to do is commit to being consistent and commit to progressively overloading the movements that you do. So if you do 10 reps of a front squat at 50 kilos this week and we move to 8 reps next week, well, then we need to track that number so that we can make it heavier. So that is going to progressively build your strength. There's only a few different movement patterns that we need you to train. We need you to do a squat, a hinge, a push, a pull, carry something. And that's pretty much it. And we can do that across 2 sessions. So that's all I need you to commit to doing. If you're someone who trains more often, great. You're going to get more conditioning in. You're going to get more strength movements in. But when you're doing a strength day, I need you to focus on that. And lastly, if you're listening to this and you're somebody who doesn't get coached, well then, honestly, just going to have to point it out. The single biggest predictor of whether somebody sticks with resistance training is whether or not they were taught to do it properly in the first place. I've had so many people come into the gym here who have been members of previous gyms and they were never really shown how to do anything. So instead they retreated to what they knew. And what did they know? They knew how to run on a treadmill and they knew how to work a rowing machine. But when it came to actually going out and using the free weights or even some of the weighted machines, they just didn't trust themselves. They didn't feel comfortable. So if that is you, get coached. Find someone to teach you. If you're a member here and you want to learn some new things, book a goal review. Let's have a chat. Let's talk about incorporating more resistance training into your body. 2 prongs. If you're not a member, that's you. If you are a member, hopefully you found something in here. So listen, the quick recap is that resistance training is the closest thing to a health cheat code because it moves the 3 big levers at once. Bone density. You do not want to become fragile as you age. Insulin and sensitivity. So your metabolism stays in your corner and works for you the way it's supposed to do. And then finally, muscle mass. So the version of you at 75, 80, 85, 90, however long we stay on this mortal planet, that version of you is strong. That version of you can lift. That version of you can get around the house without assistance. And I think that's what we should all bear in mind. And you can do that with 2 focused resistance training sessions a week, focusing on the big primary movers. That's it. That's the game. That hits it. So whether you're already here, whether you're not, that's cool. You cannot outrun a bad diet and you cannot out cardio a sedentary lifestyle. You can incorporate a balance of cardio in for sure, but no matter what, I need 2 focused resistance training sessions from everyone to make sure that we're all here and we're all having fun at 90. That's it. But can you imagine if you did it for 5 years, 10 years, a decade, 2 decades, 3 decades? I realize I just said 10 years and a decade at the same time. I'm aware they're the same thing. Thanks for the corrections already. But that's what we're talking about. I want you to be functional. I want you to be strong for as long as possible. And I want that for everybody. And that's one of the reasons for getting back onto doing this podcast. I want to spread that message when so much of what we see online is glamorizing just doing cardio alone when you need to get a balance in. I can't emphasize enough how important resistance training is to a healthy, balanced exercise program. There is, of course, room for cardio. 100% there is. It's amazing. However, it is not the be all and end all. 2 resistance training sessions a week. Please. And look, if this episode has shifted something for you, share it with somebody. Send it to someone you think needs to hear it. Maybe you've been trying to convince someone who's older. Maybe it's a parent. Maybe it's an aunt and uncle. Someone you know who's just a bit older who keeps saying they're too old to start, or else they keep putting it off and saying they'll start next year. Maybe send it to them. If you're a member here, and it's hit something and you want to talk about maybe shifting your training program around, well then just shoot me a message. We can have a chat. You can book in with a goal review. We'll do something. Other than that, guys, keep keep it going, keep training hard. I'll see you in the gym, and I will catch you all on the podcast next week. Thank you.